let's back up to when Hegseth took over as Secretary of Defense. He changed the name to the War Department, whatever, but he has removed over 40 generals and admirals, either fired them or forced them to be retired. That is a huge amount of subject matter expertise that he forced out the door. That's number one. Number two, when you look at his civilian people that he has around him, chiefs of staff, secretaries of the actual departments, they also lack the prerequisite knowledge to understand basic stuff that me and you, who got to just 05, understand. Okay. This is where, I had 3 jobs that directly deal with this scenario. Number one, I was at Missile Defense Agency. I was the war games planner for Central Command, for CENTCOM. So I would go once a quarter over to the Middle East and help them set up their games and their air defense. So I knew what the architecture was, blah, blah. I was like, this is not going to be good if this happens. Number two, I was also the executive assistant, the EA, to Military Sealift Command Actual, the commanding officer of all of our logistics ships in the Navy. My job, starting at 5 a.m. to like midnight every day, was to track all of this stuff and make sure we understood how logistics work to supply the United States Navy worldwide. And then number 3, as commander of Task Group 56.7, if you Google it, you will see that, hey, our job is to keep Strait of Hormuz open with these gunboats. I was in charge of those gunboats. That's what that big sign in the backboard was for. So I'm uniquely qualified to talk about this. So back in February, the morning that this happened, I was on with Susan here on Lincoln Square, and I said, this is going to go horribly. All right. Mm-hmm. And then in March, April, I'm sitting there saying the bases are gone. We have no logistics. What does that mean? That means we cannot sustain a fight in the area on our terms. And you know this. What's that term called? The distance,
well, it's the tyranny of distance. So
there it is.
But how do we get here? I mean, Hegseth covered up that the main supply bases in the region were damaged or destroyed. That's how we got here. People, our Navy, this is needs to be resupplied, and we have these bases everywhere around the world. In the Middle East, it was Bahrain, UAE, Oman, and those bases were damaged or destroyed, and so we had to shift our supply bases outside of that region. And that's where you get in the tyranny of distance, right? Because you're bringing now food and supplies from places like Diego Garcia or Singapore, which are like, I mean, look at that, man.
Thousands of miles away, which means now if you try to do fresh food, the staying power is not there. Right. So there's no sustainability. All of our logistical support for the Middle East was inside the Strait of Hormuz in the actual Gulf or the Red Sea. And what did Iran, and I'm going to use the word brilliantly, do? They destroyed the bases inside the Persian Gulf and then had the Houthis shut off the Red Sea. Basic 101 war gaming type stuff. And now you've got to figure out a whole new logistical hub of how to do it. Now, granted, over the course of 30 years, we have gutted our logistics hub because we had these bases. That was a strategic decision we made. But if you cannot defend those bases and you're relying on them to supply your actual force, we have a problem. Within 48 hours of this thing kicking off, I saw a video that people put on social media, because you're right, Hegseth denied it, of Bahrain being blown to bits, my office being blown to bits, UAE, my other offices blown to bits when I was in command there. Okay, I said then this is going to go terrible. And the fact that they have not acknowledged this until now, because now they're acknowledging, they're leaking it out. But most importantly, they had no plan B, Amy.
Right. And this is where the war games come in. If you have leaders that have actually done things at what we call the strategic level, not the tactical level that Hegseth has worked at his whole entire life, and even that not well. But supply disruptions are real. And so what was the sustainment plan for when the operation that everybody thought hoped was going to be 6 weeks turns into 6 months? And your bases that normally supply your ships and your personnel in the area are now taken out. That's kind of stuff that happens in war games that you talk through and you really, and it's part of it. And it's why it's so important to have leaders that have actually done these types of things at that level so that we don't make these mistakes, or we don't just say, oh, Mr. President, we can do this. Sure, we're gung-ho, we can do pull-ups, we can do anything, and not tell them what's going to happen here, what's likely to happen.
And you bring up a good point about the plan B, the strategy level. And so what folds into strategy is diplomacy, because you need allies. Your plan B should have been allies. But when you go out of your way to tariff them,
100%.
talk trash about them, and not understand that you may one day need them, now you're mad that they're not showing up and you got no plan B. You can't. You're mad at Korea, South Korea. You're mad at the UK. You're mad at all these people who've been with us basically since the end of World War II and beyond, because they don't want to support your strategic vision of dominance, right? But you can't even you can't even go to the Strait of Hormuz right now and clear mines if they let you, because you don't have any minesweepers anymore. You decommed them. Your administration.
That's another piece. That's another piece. Yeah.
Guess who you got to go to get those? France and the United Kingdom and Japan. All these people who, last I checked, the Japanese prime minister said she won't even set foot in the United States ever again. Last I checked, you just pulled South Korea's freaking air defense systems to move to the Middle East, and you just canceled.
We're not making any other friends in the area, any other partners, and we have, given some of those capabilities or handed some of those logistical capabilities. They're not necessarily sexy. We like the lethal stuff. We're Pete Hegseth, lethal America.
Lethality.
So the problem with that is, when we don't have allies and partners, it hurts.
It's
and you talked about, the fact that we did, since the 1990s, correct me if I'm wrong, have sort of gutted kind of the logistics fleet. We used to have Navy crewed military sealift command vessels, and now they're kind of civilianized, and it just we don't spend as much money on it, and I don't know.
No, I think you're right. And yes, we had heavy lift capability that's been dramatically reduced. And the thing that people need to understand, there's a great guy on YouTube who talks about this because he's a merchant mariner by trade. It's like, what's up with shipping is what his channel is. You should definitely check it out. But when I was at MSC, the big strategic issue that we tried to figure out was, how do we maintain the requirements, the lift requirements, when we have an aging fleet that may not be up to the task of real conflict? So what you do is you try to partner with other nations, create a combined fleet. There's things you can do where Congress can, basically hijack and take civilian vessels to make that work. But now you got to train the merchant mariners. See, this is the minutia that Hegseth should be doing instead of doing crappy ass pull-ups. That's what he should be doing.
He should be doing that instead of going to Iowa and campaigning for members of Congress.